Patrick Cook here. Thanks for joining me in another gotcha discussion. We're talking about some of the bugs and the idiosyncrasies of the Mandelbulb 3D fractal generator. This is kind of an interesting one. It's definitely in the category of a bug, and it's just kind of an annoying little thing that if you trip on it, you kind of waste your time. Okay, I'm calling this the preview bankruptcy, and the reason I give it that little name is because you will render Mandelbulb the entire application dead in the water if you do a certain thing. Okay, now let me explain what that thing is. All right, so let's say that you put together an animation. Okay, I've got a pretty cool animation right here. This is an old project that I think. This was an animation that I used in my animation project, Edge of Chaos. That's up on my creative channel if you're interested. All right, now so. I mean, obviously, this thing gets pretty beefy. That's, somewhere on the order of 10, 11,000 frames. Okay, so that's a pretty good animation. Probably 2.5 minutes long, something like that. Now, let's say that I want to say preview. I don't know, the first 10 keyframes, okay? All right, 10 keyframes. So this is my preview area down in here, and I'm going to preview keyframes 1 through 10. That's the plan anyway. All right, now over here, I can say render every nth frame. In other words, render every second frame, or every third frame, or fourth frame, or whatever. All right? It's just a way of cutting down the number of frames that have to be rendered for the purposes of the preview. Okay? This is not the main rendering. This is just a preview. I'll show you. Now, over here, I can actually I can scale it up or down. I'll give you a for instance. Let's just say I want to scale this. To, let's say 8. So if I start punching that, you'll see here that I'm getting a render that's pretty small. In other words, I've scaled it down. I've downscaled it by a factor of 8. Not a big deal. Okay? That's how that works. Here, I'm going to downscale it by a factor of, say, 3. And we get a preview window which is larger. Now, obviously, the more downscaled, or the higher the number, the smaller the preview window, the faster the preview renders. Okay? Now, here's the problem. All right, you'll notice here that it says mem needed. All right? 1,210 megabytes. All right, and the time needed, that's fine, that's an estimate. But I want to concentrate on this mem needed. If I put a 4 here, mem needed is 681, a 5, 436, less memory, a 6, 303, less memory. All right, you get that. All right. Now, let's put a 1 here. Now this is saying that I'm going to need 10,892 megabytes. All right, which is what? That's pretty beefy. That's a lot of memory that's going to be required to give me basically a preview almost identical to the preview, I'm sorry, the animation that I would render out for real, okay? And that's going to take a lot of megabytes of memory. Let's not do that. Therein lies the problem. I'm going to show you now in a minute now. Let's just do this. Let's come over here. Let's pull this over. Let's watch this. So this is my Windows Task Manager. Here is the Mandelbulb3D. And you'll notice here that it's consuming 42.3 megabytes to run this application. All right? That's not bad at all. That's tiny. Tiny. I mean, you got other things in here. My Brave browsers, like what, 2 gig. All right, serious stuff. Now, so if I render this at 4, get my task manager. Where'd my task manager? Let's get that task manager back. Come on. Okay. You notice here that Mandelbulb is now taking 725 megabytes, all right, of memory, because it's taking memory, all right, to run this preview. Let me exit this preview, and we'll see this 725 go down. All right, let's exit it. Get my preview back here. Come on. Okay, there we go. All right, back down to 41.9. All right, now let's get to the problem. Let's get to the problem. You'll notice here that what I just demonstrated is when I run a preview at a downscaling of 4, is what I ran it at, all right, it was consuming memory, which I'm not surprised by. And then I terminated the render preview, and everybody was happy. Now the problem is if I come in here like this, and I say render this at 1, at a downscale of 1, that is going to need all this memory, this is where I get in trouble. All right, because now let's legitimate. I want to see a big preview. Why not? So here's what happens. I render preview, and I get an out of memory. All right. Now Mandelbulb went in there, all right, and it tried to grab all that memory, 3,840.7 megabytes. It grabbed all that memory. But here's the problem. You would think that you can just punch OK on that. Everybody's happy. And it all goes back to normal and everybody's happy again. The problem is, this gotcha is that Mandelbulb doesn't give that memory back to Windows. Watch. Watch this memory now. All right, and I think I'm going to, okay, let's put it right there. Watch this right here. Okay, I get it. Can't do it. It did not give that memory back. Didn't give it back. All right. So now if I say, well, okay, I can't do that anymore, so let's do a 5. Well, let's go back to 4, which we did before. Render. Not enough memory available, because Mandelbulb never gave that memory back on that particular downscale of 1 preview attempt of mine. Okay. All right, let's try 10. Render. Not enough memory. Again, because Mandelbulb never returned the memory back to Windows on that gotcha where I said, give me 1. The only way out of this is to close Mandelbulb. That's the only way to get that memory back. And it's not just the preview anymore. There's other things that you're going to do with this application that's going to require memory, and that memory won't be available to Mandelbulb. Mandelbulb is effectively crashed, but it's not crashed from an error. It's crashed because it doesn't have enough memory to do anything with that from this point on, because I went and I asked for a render preview that was more than Mandelbulb could handle. Okay, so let's reset it. I'm going to exit. There, Mandelbulb is gone. Let me start Mandelbulb up again. Okay, I got to load my project. I got to start all over again. But you do notice here that the Mandelbulb is now only consuming 24.1 megabytes. Okay, even if I was to do this, let's render this guy out. Forget about my big project. Okay. All right, let's do this. Let's get the navigator going. Get that over here somewhere. Let's get the animations going. Let's get that over here somewhere, like that. Okay. Good, 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 good. Okay. Let's pull this. Okay. Let's make that a keyframe. Okay, I made that a keyframe. I don't know, let's just move just so we got something different. I'm going to make that a keyframe. I got 2 keyframes right there. No big deal. Not even my complicated animation. This is the basic default. All right. Now, Mandelbulb is consuming 26.0. I can do a preview. Excuse me. Let's do a preview of 2. Render my preview. That's my 2 little frames, keyframes. You notice here 31.5. I'm going to exit this. It gave that memory back. Now we're back at 29. Okay. Now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say render this bad boy. All right. All right. So now what it's doing is it's only 2 keyframes with only 150 subframes. Not a big deal. All right. And it gave it back. So where you get into trouble is where you have lots of keyframes. Let's do this. I'm just going to make lots of keyframes. All right, look at that. So all I did is I just punched that keyframe a bunch of times. I got a bunch of keyframes now. All right, now, all right, 247 megabytes. Let's render the, okay, no problem there. All right, and then exit, and it gives me my memory back. All right, so here's your problem. Either gotcha. When you get into a situation where you have a somewhat lengthy animation, all right, that you want to preview, and if you preview down here in the downscaling of 1, effectively no downscaling, okay, all those keyframes, and if it exceeds the memory that Mandelbulb can utilize, it will give you an out-of-memory notification message, and Mandelbulb will not give that memory back. All right. So the strategy there to avoid this particular gotcha, which I call the preview bankruptcy, the preview is to be very careful that you don't try to preview at a low downscaling of a long animation. All right, preview 10 keyframes at a time, not 50. All right, in order so that you don't run into this problem where Mandelbulb effectively crashes because it's out of memory, and then won't give the memory back to Windows, and therefore is effectively locked out, and you have to exit Mandelbulb in order to get that memory released and given back to Windows. Okay, so this is the preview bankruptcy. Just be careful when you're down here in the downscaling of 1 or even 2, when you're trying to do a preview of a long or more complicated animation. But if you have a short animation or a very basic animation structure, a very basic formula. This is what? This is one formula, not a big deal. You don't have high memory consumption to do a preview, in which case you're probably okay. But if you trip on a situation where you've exceeded the memory that Mandelbulb will take from Windows, and then you get into an out of memory, and then you get into an application lockout, you have no option but to exit the Mandelbulb application to release that memory. This is another good reason why you should save often. Once you've done a bunch of work in your bunch of keyframing work, come over here and save it. Save it just in case you run into that kind of a situation where you have to exit Mandelbulb in order to be able to go. And if you get to a point where you can't save because Mandelbulb doesn't function anymore, you could lose work. Okay? So that's this gotcha. Hope it's helpful, and I hope that you never run into that, but I think you won't, because now you know another gotcha. All right. We'll catch you another time. Thanks for joining me. You take care.